So I'm here to just talk about AAC. And as a speech therapist, my goal is always function, function, function. I want to make sure that the things that we're talking about today are things you guys can actually implement at home. I feel like AAC can be a little intimidating because it really is like learning a whole new language and it takes time to learn. I always say you don't learn Spanish in a day. You're not going to learn AAC in a day, but hopefully this can kind of give everybody some just foundational knowledge. Just a little bit about me. A LAMP certified professional, touch chat certified trainer, Lingraphica certified technology specialist. I've done AAC evaluations for pediatrics and adults, and familiar with a bunch of different systems, Toby's, Control Bionics. There's a bunch of different systems out there. So if your child is using a device, there's a good chance I've worked with it before. So for today, my goals are just to have a brief introduction of communication systems. And I like to do this because I like families to understand why their device was specifically chosen for their child. There's many, many communication systems out there, some geared towards adults, some geared towards children. And I think it's important to understand at least the underpinnings of the device for families so they can know why that program was potentially selected for their child. Same thing with core and fringe vocabulary. That's what a lot of the devices, especially for kids, are based on. And then we'll get into more of the meat where we're looking at levels and prompting, how to facilitate independent initiation, which I find is a big area of struggle for a lot of families because you often know what your child wants without them even saying anything. It's like, okay, how do I get them to use the device? And then we'll talk about just how to facilitate communication and a bunch of different daily activities. And then we'll just kind of close with some common questions and misconceptions. I want this to be as beneficial for everybody as possible. So if you have questions, please stop me. I'm happy to have more of a discussion-based kind of dialogue versus me just sitting here talking at everybody. So if there's any questions, please stop me. I'd rather answer questions in the moment than just kind of be a windbag up here. So as far as what is AAC, there's a couple different kinds. Most of your kids at this point probably have high-tech devices, which are like this one on the bottom right, where they're touching an icon, it says it out loud, it's some kind of computer. But there are other kinds of devices out there that you might have started with at some point. Mid-tech, which is in the middle, or low-tech, which is like PEX, a paper-based version, exchange system kind of a thing. So with a high-tech device, there's two components. There's the hardware, so the machinery itself, and then the language program that's selected with it. So who needs AAC? I find that this is a little bit of a hot button topic because a lot of families say, well, they can talk. They tell me, 20 or so words. They can repeat everything I tell them to. And my response to that is always, if you have to tell them and if you have to model consistently for them to say something verbally, that's not true independent functional communication. And that's what we're looking for, is the functional independent communication. So, and that's not to say that just because you're an AAC user means you only communicate with your device. I have plenty of clients, patients, kids that do both. They say some things, they use their device, and it's a total communication approach. That's what I prefer when I'm working with families and devices, is a total communication approach. So who needs AAC? If your child has poor intelligibility, you're having a hard time understanding them. If they mostly use a lot of scripted phrases, they repeat a lot of things that you say. If we're speaking in scripts, that is communication, but is it communication that everybody outside of the home and at school is going to understand? That's always the question that I kind of throw out there, because if it's not, AAC can kind of help support and supplement that. If we use a limited number of words independently, that's probably the most obvious reason why kids are referred for devices. If we use gestures or lead a communication partner more than using verbal speech, and like I mentioned, if we're constantly requiring verbal prompts to initiate communication, initiate language, then that's another reason for AAC. So this is just very brief, and I kind of just have this up here more for everybody's knowledge so you can understand what kind of device your child has. Types of systems, especially for kids, are typically broken up into two categories. There's category-based systems, so those are things like the touch chat, the Proloquo, TD Snap Core, where there's categories, there's folders, everything is very much organized like an adult's brain. Not to say that I don't put younger children on these programs, because I do, but I feel like the category-based systems are more beneficial for older kids because it is category-based. And a lot of times the little ones that I work with aren't going to know the difference between if I say, okay, put the fruits in this pile and the vegetables in this pile. They don't have that understanding of the category. So if you don't have that understanding of the category, it's just a little bit harder to use those systems. And then the other types of systems are motor planning based systems. So LAMP Words for Life, TD Snap, the motor planning page sets, Unity, Speak for Yourself. These are organized using motor memory and motor planning. So what I mean by that is if you're typing on a keyboard, you don't think of each individual letter as you're typing it because you've memorized everything on the keyboard where all the letters are. So if I were to, that's motor memory, right? That's you've remembered it. You don't have to even think about it. If I rearranged all the letters on the keyboard and changed it from our standard QWERTY keyboard, then you would have to kind of look down again and go, okay, where's the A? Where's the B? Where's the C? You'd have to really scan and look through everything. So for the motor planning based systems, this is my preference for a lot of the younger ones, just because it does rely on that automaticity. They don't have to think about navigation as much, and it becomes just a little bit more automatic for them. Not just like I said, you mix and match as they get older, programs change, preferences change as kids grow older, but these are just kind of the basic underpinnings. So when we're talking about the vocabulary that is on these devices, most AAC devices for children are rooted in core vocabulary. So core vocabulary is about 400 to 500 words that make up 80% of our conversation throughout our day as adults. So it's words like go, eat, more, help. I call them your bang for your buck words because you can communicate a lot of different things with just a smaller amount of words. So these core words are important, especially for devices, because we already know our kids, are learning language. It's taking a little bit longer. They learn language a little bit differently. So I want to give them the best chance of success by teaching them core vocabulary. And then if we look at the next thing, fringe vocabulary, that's all the other words that we kind of use in conversation. So that's about 20% of our conversation throughout the day. Things that are specific to your kiddo, special interests like cat, soccer, I have a cat named Marbles. Like those are fringe that are very specific to me. So I have 80%, there we go, and then 20%. So we need both to have a conversation. I like to say we need both to make the world go round, but really teaching that core is how we're going to facilitate the most functional communication. I have many, many kids that can go through their devices and go apple, cat, ball, bubbles. They can tell you those specific things, but you cannot have a conversation by just labeling things that you want. So if we're looking at global language development, we do need those core words to support sentence expansion, using longer utterances, and also accessing different functions of language besides just requesting. So quickly, I kind of just want to make sure everybody kind of has an understanding. I have words up here. We can just kind of say if they're core words or fringe words. So different. We can all just maybe like shout it out. Do we think that's a core word or a fringe word? Yes, that's a core. Oh, sorry, that's a fringe. Turn. Core. Yes, exactly. Help. Yep. Please. Fringe. Because if I just go to you, please. Okay. Please what? Like, please what? So please is, I put this one in here on purpose because parents, understandably, are very big on manners. I'm going to tell you to kick please out the window because it's taking up space, and I'd rather your child tell me more specifically what they want than saying please, and then I have to figure out what please is actually for. So please is a fringe word. Toy. Fringe. Yep. Fringe. You. Yeah. So it's a little tricky, but you get the hang of it. So now if we're looking at levels of prompting, I kind of rearrange them from most assistance to least assistance. The most assistance that we're going to ever give is hand under hand. One thing I see speech therapists doing a lot, families doing a lot, is hand over hand, and that drives me a little bit bonkers, because how would you like it if somebody was forcibly asking you or telling you to choose a word, make a selection? In my experience, if you've tried to do hand over hand for a long time, one of two things is going to happen. The user is going to lose interest in the device because it's being forced, and communication has to be motivating. It can't be forced. Or you're going to get smacked. I've had both happen to me. So I usually say hand over hand with this microphone, which is, we're taking over and we're just kind of pointing, pushing for the child. We don't want to do that. What I will allow is hand underhand, with the caveat that the user has to allow it. Sometimes kids just need a little bit of extra attention direction. So I'm okay with us going hand underhand and guiding. But if the user refuses and they pull away and they're like, get away from me, then that's it. We're not doing hand underhand. We're not using that level of physical prompting if they're not into it. The next kind of bump down from that in terms of prompting is modeling language. So just by a quick show of hands, how many families model language throughout the day on their device, on their students' kids' devices? Model language, like you guys are pushing the buttons. Good. Okay. Good. That's a great number, actually. Modeling is hard because the families have to know the device probably better than the user to learn where things are, because kids are quick, and if you're not quick enough, that's this question. If you're not quick enough, they're on to the next thing. But modeling language is, you kind of narrating whatever activity you're doing, narrating things, and you pushing the buttons on the device without expecting the user to do anything. So then under that is verbal prompts. Oh, I don't know what you mean. Go get your talker. We can figure it out. I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me. Go get your talker. Just telling them. Next under that is gesture cues. So you're pointing to whatever icon you want them to use and not saying anything. And then the least invasive prompt is extended wait time. And this is probably the most important one, but also the hardest one for families to do, because life is busy, and you usually, a lot of families have more than one kid. They have a lot more going on than just, focusing on one thing at a time. But that expectant pause, that wait time, is very important for our users. My rule of thumb is 10 seconds for wait time. And if you've ever had a conversation with somebody and waited for 10 seconds for them to give you a response, it's very long and it's very uncomfortable. But it's necessary, because a lot of our kids need extra processing time. They need to know that, hey, I'm waiting for you to say something now. And we also don't want them to feel rushed, because how nerve-wracking and anxiety-inducing is that if we're like, okay, what are you trying to say? Let's go. Nobody likes to be rushed like that. So wait time is hard, but it probably is one of the most important takeaways from today is you have to wait, and you have to let your user, process and give them time to what they want to say. So how we get to facilitating independence. We want to acknowledge all attempts at communication. So I had one family the other day, they asked their adult son, who's 24 now, what do you want to eat? And the first thing he always does is chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, I think yogurt. That's his sequence every single time. And then they have to show him the choices, and then he'll make a selection. But every single time, what do you want to eat? It's those 3 buttons that he hits over and over again. You still want to acknowledge it because he's trying, right? You still want to say, you know what, I hear that you want those things, but that's not a choice right now. Let's pick something different. We can also redirect to the device instead of rote repetition. So another kind of trap that I see a lot of families getting caught in is say, I want cookie, say, I need bathroom, say whatever. If we get trapped in this say, it just becomes rote repetition, as opposed to the user actually thinking about what they want to have to say and then initiating it. So that's a big one. It's almost better for you to say, you guys know your kids, right? It's almost better to say, yep, you look like you need something. Go get your talker and we can figure it out. And I know that takes extra time and that's an extra step, but that's probably a better thing to do. Redirect them to their device, then say, oh, okay, you want a cookie. Say, I want cookie. Just because that gets repetitive, and again, it doesn't require any processing time or any processing or active thought on their part. Another way to facilitate independence is modeling language without expectation. I kind of touched on that briefly, but you as adults should be using the devices more than your child. That's just really the bottom line. If we want our users to get really good at using the device, the adults have to be modeling language constantly without expectation, and you have to be using it more than your child. And I have a video that kind of demonstrates that a little bit. And then the last thing I always like to say is kids will surprise you. Believe that they can do it before we jump in and ask for help. I think adults want to be really good helpers. But I found more often than not, if you give kids the space to figure it out on their own, they will. They just need that extra time. And my big thing is we have to create opportunities for communication. It's hard, but if we're not creating those opportunities and we're just kind of going throughout our day, They're just not going to be able to use the device as much because everything's kind of on autopilot. So some of the strategies I like to give families for facilitating communication and kind of forcing them in a situation where they have to communicate. I always tell families, I'm a mean therapist. I am not going to do anything unless your child explicitly tells me to do it. We will sit there and we will wait for 10 minutes and I will watch your child struggle to open a box for 10 minutes that I purposely picked that box because I know they can't open it themselves, because they have to want to come to me and say, I need help or open or something like that. So I tell families, hide your kids' favorite toys. So they have to come ask for them. Say, I need help looking for this. If you have a snack pack of cookies or chips, don't open it for them right away. Give them the bag of chips and see what they do. If they can open it themselves, great. It's an independent skill. You shouldn't be opening their chips then anyways. But if not, they need to be able to kind of communicate with you, exactly what they want. And we're doing puzzles and stuff like that. I'm giving you one piece at a time instead of letting you take 17 puzzle pieces and then do what you want with them. So sabotage, playing dumb is a really great way to create those opportunities for communication at home. So this one, I kind of touched on this already, limiting help and waiting it out. This is the hardest, I think. And it's not to say every single time your kid needs help, you're going to make them struggle. Like, no, of course not. But maybe I always tell families, pick 1 or 2 times throughout the day that you're going to focus and say, this is going to be my device time. Because I understand also, if you have 2 or 3 kids, everybody needs your attention at once. You can't just, be letting one kid kind of figure it out and then the other 2 are doing climbing walls, who knows what. So I say pick 1 or 2 times throughout the day where you're intentionally going to not help them. You're going to wait them out and let them see if they can figure it out for themselves. Not jumping in is super hard, but it's super important. And then offering choices. I like visual choices. I know that's not always possible, but kind of giving 2 or 3 options visually that the user can see. This way they know concretely what's in front of them. It kind of also prevents them from doing that, chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, yogurt, strawberry, repetition that sometimes they get stuck in. So if we're offering choices, they know exactly what's being asked of them and what the clear expectation is. Okay, so this is what I call communication station. And a lot of times families get stuck in, well, they can tell me what they want. Okay, great. That is one function of communication. These in green are typically the ones that families are like, okay, they've done all they can on the device because they can ask for help, they can make choices, they can tell me what they want, they can tell me that they're all done. What often gets left out are all of these things. Commenting, I like your shirt. Directing action, go open the door for me. Answering open-ended questions, asking questions, self-advocacy, I need to use the bathroom, I'm uncomfortable, something hurts. And then pragmatics, just having a conversation. I think that even as speech therapists, we get stuck in the green and we're like, okay, well, they can do all these basic things. We're discharged, we're ready to go. What's next? And I would push back and say, well, how often in your conversation throughout the day are you just asking for help, making choices, requesting, or protesting? As adults, hardly ever. We're asking questions of other people. We're saying, oh, hey, I like your shoes. That outfit looks great today. We're communicating a lot more than just the basics. So our kids deserve the opportunity to communicate more than just the basics too. Okay, so this is a video I have, and I want you guys to kind of pay attention to who's using the device more, how many times I'm verbally saying, touch star, touch cookie on the device. And I want you to kind of notice how much wait time I'm giving and other just prompting that we've talked about before. This is a user who I think at this point, I had only been working with her for 2 months. And she made fantastic progress in 2 months. One session, she told me on her device, I love you. The next session, she told me you sucked. So it little depends on the day, but she is a really great communicator because her parents, carried over things at home. And she just responded very, very well to therapy. Okay. And we're reading a book too. So I like to show this because, again, it's not just a typical, okay, tell me what you want kind of a thing. You guys can use AAC when you're reading stories with your kids, when you're playing games, all that good stuff.
All right, we got a talker. All right, I have a book about spiders and I have brown bear. Which one should we do first? Oh, okay.
I want spider book. I want spider book.
I want the spider book. All right, let's read.
Read.
Itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout.
Down.
Down came the rain and washed the spider. Down came the rain and washed the spider. Out!
So it's a little hard to see because the device is off camera, but it's a little hard to see because the device is off camera, but I'm just kind of pointing to the icon that I want her to hit. And I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying, touch your talker, tell me out, tell me X, Y, and Z. I am just pointing and she is doing it. And this is something she really likes to do. So she's participating really nicely, but I'm also using it as an opportunity for her to help me read the book. And we're filling in words as we're reading the book too. So that's what she's doing. And I think I've touched the device maybe 6 or 7 times at this point, and she's touched it once. And that's okay. That's what good modeling looks like. That's how we get to her using the device more independently.
Out came the sun.
Sky.
Oh, not the sky. Out came the
Sun.
And dried up all the rain. And the itsy bitsy spider. Oh my goodness, Miss Lori can't talk. Itsy bitsy spider. What did the spider do?
Climb.
He climbed up the spout again. Good job. High five. All right, finished.
So I like that video for a couple different reasons. It clearly shows I'm using the device way more than her, and that's what modeling looks like. And it's also a good example. That last section before she touched the talker, I was waiting a while. Like I was pointing, I was tapping her and pointing, and she was just like, do, 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 do. So then I kind of had to ask her a question, like, what did the spider do? Just to kind of get her attention and re-engage her. But at no point during this whole interaction did I grab her and make her touch buttons. Did I tell her, touch spider, touch out? And if she didn't do it, this video is longer, I cropped it down. But if she didn't do it, I would have just kept on going, because I think a lot of times these devices get used as a tool for compliance. And compliance is not communication. ABA is compliance. I'm not concerned with that. If you want compliance, go there for that. Communication has to be motivating. And that's, I think, a really good example of that. And this is interesting because this girl is so smart. And I showed Mom this video and she's like, oh my goodness. I'm good. Okay. I showed Mom this video and she's like, oh my goodness, she won't use the device at home with me. And we talked about different strategies and stuff like that to get her to use the device at home. But she's a smart cookie and she knows that Mom knows what she wants. I'm sorry, your question? Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Oh, perfect. She knows Mom knows what she wants. So at home, getting to use it was struggle. Family went on a cruise. Girlfriend used her device the whole time because it's a new environment. She recognized it was a new environment, and Mom doesn't probably know what she wants on this cruise. So home, I think a lot of times is the hardest place to use a device because the kids are in their routine. You know, they know what you want. They know what you want. You know what they want. So the strategies really have to be implemented, but I think it's great. And it speaks to, okay, you can be a really functional communicator when you're just maybe in a different environment too. Question, please.
Yes. Did you create a page specifically geared towards that book?
No.
Because Joshua would have navigated to multiple different pages to say those few words.
And that's why I'm not a huge fan of category-based systems. So
Okay.
she's on LAMP, which is a motor planning-based system, which is
Okay.
that automaticity piece. LAMP, Words for Life.
And there are multiple pages on lamps, but with those category-based systems, I find that people do get stuck in that trap of, I need a folder for Itsy Bitsy Spider. I need a folder for The Mouse Ate a Cookie, or whatever that book is. If you give a mouse a cookie, I need a folder for all these individual things, and you don't, which is why we're talking about going back to core vocabulary. Those words that I were reading in the book were core words, go, out, up. Spider was the only fringe word I think we actually modeled and used. So no folders. That's LAMP, and LAMP is organized through core words. And I encourage everybody to try to get away from file folders of words, because then it gets convoluted. The same word can be in multiple places depending on the context that you're using it in. So long answer to your question, no, there's no folders. But I think there's ways that those devices can, if they are category based, they can be organized a little bit more user-friendly, so there isn't so much navigation on the part of the user. It reduces the navigation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how I could do that with touch chat. He's 15 and has had his device for 9 years, and we're still doing like one word utterances for the most part.
Yeah, and at that point, we've been on touch chat for 9 years. Like, we're not going to, it probably doesn't make sense to change it at this point. I have kids, Proloquo is a big one, especially in this area where kids get recommended for Proloquo, and then same kind of thing. We've been on Proloquo for 10 years and we're still doing one word. So it's almost, I can look, do you have the device with you? I can look at it afterwards with you if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lori's going to be around for a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I was just wondering, when do you think that we can notice that the kids are more prepared to go to, let's say, full sentences rather than having only words?
Like pre-programmed sentences on their device, or
Yes.
them generating sentences?
I mean, on the device. I mean,
I'm not a fan of that either. I think in some situations it's okay, because like if it's a phrase like, I need to go to the bathroom, I am not going to make you, that's urgent. I'm not going to make you do a whole sentence. I need to go to the bathroom every single time. I think in some cases using pre-programmed phrases are fine. Just know that the goal of having the device and stringing individual words together is to expand vocabulary and have the child do novel sentence production. You're not doing novel sentence production if you're pre-programming the sentences on the device for them already. Does that kind of make sense? So it's okay to use some sentences. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think if you're in a conversation and, how are you, like, if they're asking, how are you? How was your day? Like, fine, let's put those in sentences, because conversation flows a little bit faster than they can probably access the words on the device. And there's no real age. If a sentence needs to be programmed on there because it's functional for the child, go ahead and do it. There's no criteria. It's very specific on the user. Do you have a question too?
hold on. We're good.
I think about so I think in our case, we're thinking about how can she communicate at the same time that she's being literate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why for us, at least in this stage, noun, verb, and it's very important in that sense, because it's two separate things.
Correct.
Being literate and being able to communicate, but at the same time, at her stage, that might make sense.
Yeah.
So do you have other similar cases where you are also experiencing a kid being literate at the same time that they are improving the ACC device?
Yeah. I think too, most devices have a keyboard function, and sometimes that keyboard function gives the user more flexibility to say what they want in a sentence than stringing words together on the icons, things like that. My one thing with pre-programming whole sentences on an icon is that you're just limiting the flexibility. So if it's something that's high frequency, like, I'm happy today, I need to go to the bathroom, can I have a soda, please? Those can be sentences, and that's fine. If we're talking about generating sentences through literacy, maybe typing is the best way to go for that, because it is a lot. I have kids that do that. They say, I'm done with the icons, I'm done with the buttons, I'm just going to type everything I want to say. It can definitely be a combo approach, but it just also understanding that reading something receptively and like understanding what you're reading literacy wise is a very different skill than expressively getting it out. So just because we can read and we might understand what we're reading doesn't mean we're at the skill level yet where we can generate a full sentence right away. So I would have to kind of, it's a little specific. I can sit with you and like see what I think, but that's like a very case by case. It depends on the individual. You know what I mean? It depends on the individual for when we're working on sentences and stuff like that. Any other questions?
Questions, anybody?
Everybody good?
How
You guys
many
can come
people,
up to me afterwards,
just
too.
hands,
Yeah.
who here has an AAC device? To everybody, right?
Mm.
What we need. So the better we learn the device, the better the system is adapted to our child,
Yeah.
the better communication we'll have.
Yep.
So
Exactly. And like there's no rules for AAC. There's no, this must be done first, this must be done second. It really is dependent on your family, the child's language level, the child's motivation to communicate, because I will say there are some kids that just don't want to talk to me, and that's fine. You don't have to talk to me. So a lot of those nitty-gritty questions are very dependent on the user. All right, so now making it happen. Implementation at home. When I'm doing initial training, and this is a slide, you know, if you want strategies specifically, I would take a picture of this slide. I usually say families try to chase around their child with a device. You're going to get burnt out. The kid's going to get burnt out. You might get whacked in the face with the device because you're running around the house with it, trying to chase them to do things. That is, I don't think, the best use of everybody's time. What I typically recommend is setting up the device as a station in your home where a lot of life happens. So like families like, oh, well, I want to keep it in their bedroom. I would say probably not the bedroom, because does everybody go in the bedroom regularly? Probably not. Kitchen, living room, family room, whatever you want to call it. That's usually where I recommend putting it as like our station, just so everybody has access to it. Everybody knows where it is. And then I threw a lot at you guys. I threw a lot of strategies at you guys. There are a lot of different ways to implement. I love when families are like gung-ho and they're like, I want to do all the things. I'm like, great, I want you to do all the things, but start off with one, because otherwise you're going to burn out and it's going to get very overwhelming very quickly. This goes back to, you don't learn Spanish in a day, you're not going to learn AAC in a day. So say, all right, I'm going to start using one strategy one time a day, whether that's snack time, I'm going to give 2 or 3 choices, and I'm going to model the choices on the device before Susie makes a choice. Or, you know, I'm going to give them a toy that's too hard to put together, and I'm going to model help while Susie's putting together the robot or whatever it is. And pick one word, one time, one strategy a day to implement, and then kind of build from there. Another thing I think families don't use a ton of is the word finder or word search feature. Every single communication device has a word search feature. Some are a little harder to find than others, but typically that word search feature will highlight the word that you're looking for. And then it's a nice little sequence that either you can follow or your kid can follow to access the icon that you're looking for. So I say, learn where that button is, live by that button, because that's how you guys are going to learn the system better than the kids are. Practice modeling during a preferred activity. This goes again back to communication has to be motivating. So if Susie doesn't like to color, we're not going to say, all right, we're going to sit down and color and we're going to use her talker while we're coloring. Like, Susie doesn't care. We have to do things that are important to the kid. And then I always like to say everybody can use the device at home. A lot of times siblings like to be helpers. So if you guys have siblings that want to be helpers, I've had families bring in older siblings because they're like, I'm not tech savvy. Let Johnny learn the tech stuff. I'm like, cool. Get the siblings involved, get everybody involved. Just know it's the users, it's Susie's talker, it's her priority, but everybody can and should be using the device at home. And I always like to say practice makes progress, not practice makes perfect. And we're looking for progress here, because what's going to happen inevitably, because this happens to me too, and I've been doing this for a long time at this point, you're going to be like, oh my God, I found this word. Great. And then Joey's off in the next room while you were finding the word. And he's like, well, we're done at that point. You know what I mean? He doesn't care anymore. He's off to the next thing. And that's okay, because you have at least learned where the word is. You've used the word search feature to find something. So practice makes progress. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to think, oh, wow, great. He's really going to want to play with a magnetiles today. And then the magnetiles come out and he's like, nah, I'm good. And you're like, well, every other day this week, you love magnetiles. Like, you just got to roll with it. And AAC is hard, except that, it's going to be a different way to work language into your daily routine. And we're looking for progress, not perfection. So these are some don'ts. And these are just, again, things that I see families kind of going into a lot. I'm just looking at time. Constantly verbally prompting them, because that gets really annoying really quickly. Tell me you want a cookie. Tell me you want pizza. Tell me you want X, Y, and Z. The constant verbal prompting actually takes up more processing space in their brain, because now they're trying to listen to you and talk about what they want to say and think about what they want to say. And then they have to find it on the device. So you guys are actually, if you're doing that, adding an extra step where there doesn't need to be one. We talked about this, use communication as compliance. Communication and speech therapy are not ABA. So I had enough about that. Say whatever, touch whatever on the talker. You guys can do it. If they're going to do it, great. If not, no big deal. We move on. And then assume they can't do it. I remember one time I think he was like 14 or 15. And we were playing Candyland. And he was great at board games, loved to play board games. And the teacher, I'm like modeling words on the talk or whatever. She's like, oh, you might have to help him find X, Y, and Z word. And like, that's fine to say. But I got a lose your turn in Candyland. So I was like, oh man, that's a bummer. I lost my turn. And on his device, he typed out, don't worry, man, it's okay. We'll figure it out together. And I'm like, where did that come from? I'm like, we were doing like 3-word sentences. Where did that come from? So I think we're all a little bit guilty of it. We're like, a little hard for them, but just like give it a whirl. See if they can do it. If it tanks, I'm all about if it tanks, it tanks. You learn and you try something different. That's kind of the attitude you have to go in with. The other thing we don't want to do is that hand assistance that we talked about before. And then I didn't mention this yet. Force them to look at the device while you model. That is another thing. You think they have to be looking to learn, and they do not. A lot of times our kids are paying attention, whether we think they are or not. And more times often than not, I find that they are paying attention. They're just focused on what they're doing. They're not looking at me. But you don't have to say, look at the talker. I'm going to find potato chips. They don't have to look at the device. It's actually a little counterproductive to do that, because again, you're adding more onto their plate. But looking at the device while you're modeling is not required. So these are just some final takeaways. Communication is reciprocal, has to be motivating. It's a back and forth thing. It's not compliance. The 10-second rule is important. I encourage you guys at home later today to count out 10-second pause in your conversation, and you'll see how long it feels and you'll see how uncomfortable it feels, but that's about the amount of time you need to be waiting. We always want to do gestures, pointing, modeling before we're jumping into, oh, tell me what you want. Tell me this, tell me that. This way we can get to independence. We want to assume that our kids can do it because our kids are smart and we know they can. And then biggest takeaway, model, even when you think they're not paying attention, because they are. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys. Questions? Yes, please. Yeah.
Instead, I'll use a generic example, like grandparent. Could you put in Nana, Papa, or you can put your own word in for that symbol? Okay.
Yeah, very customizable for that. You can take pictures of the people. I usually say pull up a picture on your phone and we'll take a picture of it right now, edit the button, and this way it's done. You don't have to take a picture of the person. It's more work.
Like I said, Lori's going to be around for a little bit. So
I also do have a device if anybody has questions or like wants to see different programs. I did bring a device to demo, so I'm happy to stick around, answer any questions anybody has.